The first time I noticed her, she wasn't doing anything special. Just standing in line at the corner cafe on a gray morning, squinting at the menu board like she didn't already know what she wanted. She wore this dark green coat that looked too heavy for the season, and her hair, light brown with a few streaks of silver, was tied in a loose knot that kept falling apart every time she tilted her head. She was 2 people ahead of me, tapping her thumb against her phone but not really scrolling. There was something about that small impatience, quiet, practiced, that drew my eyes before I even realized it. I was 24, still new in town, working a job that didn't matter, pretending I wasn't waiting for anything. The cafe was part of the act. I came every morning at 8:30, ordered the same thing, sat at the same corner table, and scrolled through the same news feeds I didn't read. That morning, when she got to the counter, she said, "1 small Americano, extra hot." The barista smiled like she said that every day. When it was my turn, I ordered the same. I didn't even like Americanos that much. It just felt like a quiet way of saying I'd noticed her. 2 weeks passed before she spoke to me. It happened because the barista mixed up our drinks. She took mine by accident, and when she noticed, she walked back toward me with this smile that looked more amused than sorry. "Yours, I think," she said, setting the cup down in front of me. I looked up too quickly, fumbled a thanks, then realized she was still standing there. "You don't strike me as a plain coffee type," she said. "What type do I strike you as?" I asked before thinking. She considered it, one eyebrow raised. "Something with milk, maybe too much milk." That made me laugh, the kind of quiet, embarrassed laugh that doesn't sound like you. She smiled once, small but real, then went back to her seat near the window. That became part of my routine too, sitting where I could see her reflection in the glass. Days blurred. Rain came and went. Sometimes she'd glance up and catch me watching. Sometimes she wouldn't. Once, she left her scarf behind. I noticed it when she was halfway out the door. I picked it up, walked after her, but stopped at the threshold, like the distance between us was heavier than the scarf itself. She turned back, maybe sensing movement. Our eyes met through the door's reflection. She opened it halfway, waiting. I handed it over. "You forgot this," she smiled again, softer this time. "You always pay that much attention." I didn't answer. My hands were shaking a little from the cold, or maybe from something else. She looped the scarf around her neck, said, "Thanks," and walked off into the drizzle. That night, I stared at my phone too long, opened her cafe's Instagram location, scrolled through photos, looking for her face in the background. Found nothing. Typed out a note in my drafts folder that said, "You forgot your scarf again," then deleted it. When morning came, I told myself I wouldn't go. I went anyway. She was there, same coat, same seat, reading a paperback with one finger holding her page. She looked up as I came in, eyes steady, not surprised. And when she left, she paused at the door, turned just enough to meet my gaze, and said quietly but clear, "You coming or not?" Then the door shut behind her, and all I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat, louder than the espresso machine. I followed her out that morning, though I didn't know why. Maybe it was the tone in her voice. Half teasing, half tired. She didn't look back again, just walked down the narrow street with her coffee steaming against the cold. We ended up side by side at the crosswalk. She didn't say anything, and I wasn't brave enough to fill the silence. The light changed, we crossed. When we reached the corner bookstore, she finally spoke. "You don't have to follow me, you know." I wasn't. I started. She raised an eyebrow, amused. "Good. I wouldn't know what to do with a shadow." Inside, she went straight to the back shelves, like someone visiting old friends. I stood a few paces away, pretending to browse, but my eyes kept flicking toward her hands. The way her fingers traced spines, pausing on titles I didn't recognize. She turned, holding a thin poetry book. "You like Rilke?" I shrugged. "I pretend to. Makes me sound more thoughtful than I am." That made her laugh, a quiet, almost private sound. We ended up sitting on the bench outside, our coffees nearly cold. She told me her name was Narian, though she said it like she didn't expect me to use it. She taught comparative literature at the community college nearby. Divorced. 2 grown kids she hardly saw. There was a weight in the way she said those things. Not shame, not sadness. Just a tired familiarity with them.
"You," she asked,
Not much to tell, I said. Graduated last year. Still figuring out what I'm doing. She nodded like that explained everything. Maybe it did. It started becoming a habit, these small, unplanned meetings that didn't feel unplanned at all. Sometimes she'd be grading papers when I came in. Sometimes she'd wave me over to sit across from her, sliding her thermos toward me. There's tea if you want. Don't worry, it's too bitter anyway. We'd talk about nothing, movies, bad poetry, the weather pretending to be winter. But under the surface, something else moved. Like static before a storm. I'd catch her looking at me over the rim of her cup, and she'd glance away too quickly. Or I'd say something careless and her mouth would soften in a way that felt dangerous. The age gap sat between us like another chair no one touched. One evening, the cafe was nearly empty. She was fixing a stack of student essays, the sleeve of her sweater pushed up just enough for her wrist to show. I offered to help staple them. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved. It wasn't long, not even a full second, but it was the kind of second that stays. She pulled her hand back, pretending to reach for her cup. You're going to make people talk, she said, smiling, but her voice sounded too quiet for it to be a joke. Whose people? I asked. She looked at me then, really looked, eyes unreadable but not unkind. Doesn't matter, they always find something to say. She gathered her papers, stood, and hesitated. Just long enough for me to notice the way her hand twitched, like she almost wanted to touch my shoulder. Then she said, softer than before, see you tomorrow, Shadow. And as she walked away, I thought I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next morning, she wasn't there, not that she had to be. But the empty corner table looked wrong without her coat draped over the chair, her book face down beside a half-finished Americano. I stayed longer than usual, scrolling aimlessly, pretending not to notice that she didn't come. The barista called my name twice before I realized my drink was ready. I told myself it didn't matter. One morning didn't mean anything. By the third morning I'd stopped believing that. She came back on a Thursday. Different coat, different energy, like she'd spent the last few days trying to convince herself to stay away and then decided not to. Morning, she said, sliding into the seat across from me without asking. I nodded, pretending calm. You disappeared. I had papers to grade. You always have papers to grade. That earned a look, not annoyed, exactly just measured. For a while, we said nothing. The hum of the espresso machine filled the space where words might have gone. She reached for her tea, fingers brushing the rim of the cup twice before lifting it. You shouldn't wait for me, she said finally. I wasn't, I lied. She smiled, small and sad. You're a terrible liar. Later that day, I ran into her again, by accident or maybe not, in the college courtyard. She was sitting under one of those stone archways, papers spread out, wind catching the edges. I bent to help before I thought about it. Careful, she said as one sheet slipped under my shoe. The midterms. Handle with compassion. I laughed, crouching beside her, our shoulders almost touching. She smelled faintly of citrus and paper. Students give you a hard time, I asked. They're just young. She looked up, eyes flicking over my face. They think everything they feel is permanent. Something in the way she said it made me forget to breathe for a moment. A shadow passed over us. It was one of her colleagues. A man about her age, jacket slung over his shoulder. Marion, he called. Faculty meeting in 10, you're late. She stiffened, gathered her papers quickly. Right. Thanks. Then to me, quieter, you should go. I nodded, watched her walk away, her pace too quick, her shoulders held too straight. That evening, she texted me. Don't read too much into things. Me, what things? Exactly, I didn't reply, but the next morning I was at the cafe again before she was. When she arrived, she hesitated at the door, then came over, sat, didn't order. Her hands rested flat on the table close to mine. We talked about nothing, about rain, a broken stapler, the smell of burnt toast from the kitchen. But her voice was softer now, uncertain. When she reached for her cup, her fingers brushed mine again. This time neither of us pulled back right away. The air between us felt heavy. Too close, too quiet. She looked at me, eyes steady, mouth parting like she might say something, then stopped. I should go, she whispered. But she didn't move. And in that breath of hesitation, The space between us nearly disappeared. Almost. We didn't see each other for 4 days. She stopped coming to the cafe, I stopped pretending I was there for the coffee. I'd pass the bookstore, glance through the windows, and keep walking. Every place we'd shared suddenly felt half-finished, like someone had closed a book mid-sentence. When she finally texted, "If you're free after class," I said yes before I could. Afternoon. The air was brittle, the kind that smells like old rain and winter waiting. She was sitting on a bench near the river, the one with chipped paint and a good view of the bridge lights. She didn't smile when she saw me, but she didn't look away either. "I thought you'd stopped showing up," she said. "I thought you wanted me to." Maybe I did. That hung there for a while. The wind moved through the trees. She rubbed her thumb along the lid of her thermos, staring at the water. "I keep trying to remind myself this isn't anything," she said quietly. "You know, just passin' time, a bit of company, that's all, is it?" Her eyes flicked to mine. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make it sound like something else." I wanted to ask what else it could be, but her face told me not to. She started talking about work. How her department head was retiring, how her daughter hadn't called back in weeks. I listened, though my mind was elsewhere. At one point, she laughed, small and tired, and said, "You're too quiet. Makes me nervous." "Maybe I'm just listening." "To what?" I looked down at the bench between us. "Everything you're not saying." Her hands went still. She exhaled through her nose, then said, "You shouldn't notice that much." There was no irritation in it, just fatigue. Like she was asking me for mercy. We sat there until the streetlights came on. I told her I'd seen her colleague the other day, the man from the courtyard. It slipped out before I could stop it. She looked up sharply. "Oh, he asked about you," I said. "Oh, he had him. What did you tell him?" "Nothing." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good, he likes to collect stories that aren't his." Her voice trembled, just slightly. Then quieter. "You shouldn't be part of one." Something in me cracked then, small, invisible, but definite. "I don't think I care what story it looks like," I said. She turned her face toward me. The light hit her cheek just enough to show the faintest tremor at the corner of her mouth. "You think that now," she whispered, "but you will." I didn't answer. Couldn't. For a long moment, neither of us looked away. The kind of silence that feels like it could tip either way, towards something honest or something ruined. She finally said, "You should go." But her voice broke halfway through it. I stood, then hesitated. "Do you want me to?" She didn't reply. Just kept her eyes on the river, jaw tight, breath even. And in the quiet between us, the question hung there, unspoken, unanswered, almost unbearable. The next morning, she was gone again, not just from the cafe, from everywhere. No texts, no sightings near campus. Her bench by the river stayed empty, even when I checked twice, pretending to be out for a walk. By the second week, I stopped pretending. I told myself she was just busy, or maybe I'd misread the whole thing. Every glance, every silence. But the truth sat heavy. She was avoiding me. It was a Wednesday when I finally saw her, late afternoon. I was cutting through the faculty hall on my way to the library when I heard her voice. She was talking to someone. That same colleague, the man with the jacket slung over his shoulder. They were standing close, too close. She laughed at something he said, the kind of polite, professional laugh that meant nothing. Still, it felt like a door shutting somewhere inside me. She saw me before I could turn away. Our eyes met for half a heartbeat, hers calm, unreadable. Then she looked right past me, kept talking. That single gesture said more than words ever could. That night, I didn't go to the cafe. Or the next night. But by Friday, I found myself there again, out of habit or stupidity. The barista handed me an Americano before I ordered. "She said you might come," he said casually. I froze. He shrugged. "The woman. The one who leaves the exact tip every time." I checked my phone, nothing. Her name sat in my messages, untouched, the last one still there. "Me, do you want me to read?" No reply. A week later, a letter showed up in my campus mailbox. Just my name, written in her neat, slanted handwriting, no return address. Inside, one folded page. "I think you're kind. That's dangerous, for both of us. Please don't wait for me to explain." I wouldn't know where to start, no signature. Just a coffee ring at the corner, faint but familiar. I read it twice, then sat there until the building lights went off. Days passed in pieces. I stopped checking the door every time it opened. Stopped saving her seat at the cafe. But some habits have muscle memory. My eyes still drifted to where she used to sit, as if she might appear between blinks. One night, walking home, I saw someone in her coat standing outside the bookstore. Same stance, same way of holding a paper cup in both hands. I almost called her name. But when she turned, it wasn't her. Just someone older, tired, waiting for someone else. I walked home with that mistake echoing in my chest. Back in my apartment, I opened her message thread. Typed something, "You don't have to explain. Just tell me if you're okay." Then deleted it. Sat there in the glow of the unsent words. And for the first time, it didn't feel like heartbreak. It had been almost a month. Long enough for routine to harden into habit again. I'd stopped checking the cafe window, stopped expecting her voice behind me. Even my phone had learned the silence. It no longer lit up for nothing. Then one evening, as I was leaving the library, I saw her. She was sitting on the stone steps outside, the same green coat from that first day. No makeup, hair down. A paper bag beside her like she'd just left the grocery store and forgotten where she was going. When she looked up, her eyes didn't widen in surprise. Just that small, tired recognition, like we'd both known this would happen eventually. "Hey," I said. "Hey," her voice cracked on the word, the way paper does when folded too many times. We sat side by side on the steps, no closer than usual. She kept her hands clasped in her lap. I kept mine in my pockets. It felt like a kind of truce. "I shouldn't have written that letter," she said. "I'm glad you did. I wasn't honest in it." "About what?" She smiled faintly, eyes on the streetlight flickering across the road. "About why I stopped coming." I didn't speak. The silence did the asking for me. She took a long breath. "My daughter came to visit. She saw us at the cafe one morning." The words hit softly, like something inevitable. She didn't say anything. Marian went on, but she didn't have to. I saw it in her face. The question she didn't want to ask. I looked at her. "And what would you have told her?" She hesitated. "That I'm too old for crushes. And too lonely for logic." Her laugh broke in the middle. We sat there a long time, watching a few late students cross the street. The world didn't seem to notice us. Or maybe it had moved on without us entirely. Finally she said, "You're kind, you know. Not naive. Just kind. And I think I needed that more than I realized." I swallowed hard. "You didn't ruin anything. You could have just said." "I know." She cut me off gently. "But if I'd said it, it would have changed everything. And I don't trust myself enough for that." The streetlight buzzed, flickered once, steadied. "Marian," I said, barely above a whisper. She turned to me. In her eyes was everything we'd almost said for months. The restraint, the wanting, the guilt, the warmth that kept them both alive. "You don't have to be careful with me," I said. She looked at me for a long time, the kind of look that could outlast whole conversations. Then, very quietly, "Yes, I do." She reached out, touched the edge of my sleeve, barely more than a brush. The smallest contact but enough to make my breath catch. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not making me explain." We sat there until the street emptied, until the air cooled enough to make her shiver. When she finally stood, she gave me a look, soft, resigned, maybe grateful. "I should go," she said. "Okay," and it wasn't goodbye, not exactly. Just that simple, human okay. The kind that means I see you. I wish things were different. I'll carry the spring came. The cafe had changed its tables. The corner one, their table, was gone, replaced by a narrow bar facing the window. New lights, new barista, same smell of burnt espresso. He still came at 8:47 a.m. out of habit, though he never stayed long. Sometimes he'd bring a book. Sometimes he'd just sit, letting the morning drift past like a scene that didn't need him anymore. Then one morning, she walked in. No hesitation this time. She wore a light blue coat, her hair shorter, a paper tucked under her arm. He almost didn't recognize her until she smiled, quietly, as if they were continuing a conversation left mid-sentence. "Still the same order?" she asked. He nodded. "You too, of course," she said. "Extra hot." They waited together, the way they used to. No rush, no tension. Just the small, warm silence of two people who'd already said everything they needed to, even the things they hadn't. They took their cups outside, back to the bench by the river. The paint had chipped further, the city noisier than before. But the light was gentle, the kind that doesn't demand to be noticed. He asked, "Still teaching?" She nodded. "Fewer classes now. I like the quiet. And your daughter? She's good." She came around. Marian looked down, tracing her finger along the rim of her cup. "We talked about you, Rose." "Oh." "She said you seemed kind." A pause. "I told her she was right." He smiled, unsure what to do with his hands. "And you okay now?" She exhaled slow. "Yeah, I think I am." The wind picked up, rustling the paper bag at her feet. He reached down to steady it, and their hands brushed again, unintentional, natural. Neither moved away. They sat like that for a while. A bus passed, students crossed the bridge, the river whispered its slow, endless rhythm. He said, "Funny, I still come here expecting the same coffee, same faces. But everything's changed." "That's how time works," she said. "It keeps changing the furniture on you." He laughed softly. "Still giving lectures? Ha! Only when someone needs reminding." She looked over, and for a brief second, just long enough, he saw that same spark from the first day, the quiet challenge in her eyes. "You coming or not?" she murmured. He didn't answer right away, just smiled, stood up, and walked beside her. Not close enough to draw attention. Just close enough to be there. They didn't talk about the past, or what it meant now. They didn't need to. Sometimes love doesn't need new beginnings. It just needs the right kind of stillness to keep breathing. At the next corner, she turned to him. "Tea later?" He nodded. "Only if it's too bitter." She laughed, that same small, familiar sound. And they crossed the street together, sunlight glinting off their cups. Later, he would think of that morning not as a return, but a quiet arrival. A life that had finally finished its sentence.